Hello and welcome to the Mighty Oaks Show. Glad to have you with us today. My name is Jeremy Stalnecker. I will be your host today and looking forward to a fantastic conversation. This is a conversation that is extremely practical, regardless of where you might find yourself in life. Today we're going to talk about health. We're going to talk about the integration of health and faith and health and mental health, our physical health and our mental health. Looking forward to this conversation with a very special guest. Before I jump into that, though, I want to remind you, as I do every single week, and every week I say, I want to remind you, as I do every single week, because there are some of you that still haven't jumped on board, and I want to encourage you to take some time when you're done listening to this to go to YouTube. And on YouTube, you can find our channel, the Mighty Oaks Foundation. Mighty Oaks Foundation. You can look for us there in the search bar. Our channel will come up. There will be some other things, but you'll see it. You'll see our logo. You'll see our name. Click on that. Hit subscribe. That's the first step. Very important. The second step is to hit the notification bell. For this reason, that lets you know when this and other content comes online. And I'll tell you, we are constantly producing content. We do our best as much as is possible to provide quality content, have great conversations, to give you the resources you need personally to be helped as we talk about so many of life's issues, but also resources that you can use to share out with other people. And I'm asked all of the time, what can I do for a loved one? What can I do for a friend? Someone that I know that may be struggling in one area or another. What can I do? I think there are a lot of things you can do. We've talked about this on this show even, but one of the things that you can do is go to our YouTube channel, which is entirely free, entirely accessible to you. Take some time to find an episode or find a testimonial or find a video around content specific to a topic. We do that all of the time. We call those perspectives. All of that is there. Find that and just share that out with someone. They can watch it. They'll appreciate you for sending that to them. Take some time, hit the notification bell. That lets you know when more content comes online. Leave us a comment, send out that link to someone else, and that would be awesome. You can also follow us on all of the social media platforms. Just look for Mighty Oaks Programs or Mighty Oaks Foundation. You can also find us in most places, Mighty Oaks Warrior Programs. So any of those things will get you there, and you'll find us. Today's episode is a little bit different. The conversation is focused primarily on the physical. Now, if you listen to this show, you know that we have a lot of great conversations with a lot of great folks and primarily focus on the spiritual as we talk about faith and we talk about the importance of faith, or the mental and emotional, how to deal with trauma and how to deal with difficulties, and whether it's a testimonial, some strategies, or some resources to do that. Today, we have a guest on that is going to speak to the physical and help us to understand, and this was a tremendous conversation, help us to understand how the physical impacts the spiritual, how the physical impacts the mental and the emotional, and some strategies we can use to begin moving forward in this area. I'm so grateful today to be able to share with you a conversation that I had with Dr. David Holmes. Dr. Holmes is a sports physician who specializes in the prevention and management of non-surgical and post-surgical injuries, specifically working with and has historically worked specifically with professional athletes, those high performers. And he's worked with professional athletes across the board. Recently, in the last couple of years, he started working as well with those in the special operations community of the United States military and continues to do that and expand in that area. And then most recently, and this is how I got to know Dr. Holmes, most recently has started to work with the Mighty Oaks Foundation to help us develop a strategy for initiating, connecting the folks that are a part of our programs with the physical aspects they need to understand to get well physically. And this is something for years we've focused on, again, the emotional and the spiritual, dealing with life and injuries, traumatic injuries and those kind of things, all that we deal with from a spiritual perspective, from a Christian worldview. But in the process of that, we have not spent the time we need to focus on the physical, getting better physically so that we can engage in these other areas. Dr. Holmes has helped us with that. So this is my conversation with him, an introduction for you, and hopefully the first of many conversations with him that you'll be a part of. So please enjoy this conversation with Dr. David Holmes. David Holmes, thank you for joining me all the way from Las Vegas. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
We met a couple of weeks ago, I guess. It wasn't that long ago, at a Mighty Oaks Foundation program for veterans and first responders, and got to know you a little bit there. Your interest in the military is awesome. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Folks know kind of who you are and what you're involved in, but let's start by talking about how someone gets into sports medicine. What was your path to get to the place where now you're working with high-level athletes and special operators in the United States military and a lot of other folks? How do you come to this place? It seems like an unusual kind of niche.
Yeah, it's I guess looking back at it, it's a whole lot of coincidences, if you will, and I don't believe in coincidence. So it's been God led, since the beginning, whether I knew it or not. And so I was a football player. Everything I wanted to do in high school was play football. I was in track just to get faster for football. Everything was football. Yeah. Went to the University of Minnesota and went to walk on and ended up blowing out my knee in a non-football related injury. Wrapped it around a pole while I was snowboarding.
Sure.
Which at the time was pretty devastating. I ended up kind of injured again, but that's actually my wife and I's first date. So things have a way of working out.
So a win and a loss, that bittersweet thing, right?
That's exactly it. So after that, after I blew out my knee, I knew I wanted to be involved in sports. I just didn't know how. Yeah. And so I knew that being an orthopedic surgeon, you got to work on athletes, but you only got to work on them for a very short period of time. And they were usually unconscious when you got to do your work. So I ended up shadowing a chiropractor, and I said, okay, well, that seems like a cool thing to do, and ended up going to school, graduating from there, and realized that chiropractic is a great tool, but when it came to the toolbox I needed to deal with the guys that I wanted to deal with, I needed a lot more. Yeah. So I ended up doing a 3-year program in sports medicine, doing my EMT, doing my CSCS, all these things that ended up making me go to school just as long as if I would have gone as an orthopedic surgeon. But yeah, so I got out and shortly after, within a year and a half, Larry Fitzgerald throws a camp he used to throw a camp, I should say, for a lot of professional athletes in the league. There'd be a bunch of wide receivers and cornerbacks and defensive backs that would come out. And I knew the trainer who allowed me to come out and work out with them. Because back then I still had some skill, at least. And so one of the guys got hurt there from Green Bay. And I said, hey, doc, can you take a look at him? I looked at him, worked on him. He felt great, got up and ran. And then he asked me to see him that week. I said, cool. He asked me to come into Green Bay. And I went into Green Bay, and that's how it all got started.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
what a journey. Man, there's so much there. And I've heard kind of an expanded version of your story, which is, again, as you mentioned, it's God ordained moments throughout your life that brought you to this place. One of the things that I appreciate about you, and I met you in person, like I said, a couple of weeks ago, but we've been communicating for a while. You've been working with folks on our staff, and really what we're trying to do is develop a program of wellness for the men and women who come through one of our programs. And we work with post-traumatic stress and trauma and all of these things. We approach all of that from a faith perspective. And one of the pieces that is often missing when you're trying to heal, spiritual wounds or a lot of the psychological damage that's done through combat and just service to your country. One of the aspects that is often missing or overlooked is the physical aspect. And I'd really like to talk about that. But before we talk about the integration of those, let's talk about your faith story a little bit, because I think it's key to what you're doing right now. You could continue working with athletes, you could continue doing some of those things, but you've decided you'll also work with those who are trying to move forward in their lives. And man, that's a big switch and a big step. Can you talk about your faith journey and what brought you to kind of that decision, that place where you find yourself right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I had a great childhood. I can't say anything against it. My parents brought us to church. We did the whole confirmation thing. We did everything. A bunch of I grew up in a small town, Princeton, Minnesota. It's the Bible Belt of the North, right? So, everybody, I think we had at one time 23 churches in a town of 4,000 people.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, so it was, it's one of those things where it surrounds you, your friends, everybody goes to church and everything.
Oh, wow.
So that kind of started out how I, got known or got closer to Christ. Some of my very best friends also, one of them was a military chaplain and now is a pastor in Minneapolis. And so it's kind of always been there. I will say this, however, though, like most of us, that kind of ebbs and flows during your years in college and everything like that. But one of the things that kind of really brought me to a place where there's an undeniable presence in my life that can, I guess, control anything. And it was when my dad was passing away. So my dad died of cancer. And I tell people, I say, listen, I'm a scientist by nature. I went to undergraduate work, and most people find this very, very confusing. But I went to undergraduate degree at the University of Minnesota for evolutionary biology. Wow. I was probably the only person on the campus taking evolutionary biology, and as well as history of the New Testament and all of these types of classes. Because my thing is kind of like the scientists of old. I want to understand the way the world is and the way the human body is and everything like that. Not so I can disprove God, but so I can understand what he did.
Yeah, that's good.
And so, we get to this point where I tell people that there's a difference, that the only difference between a scientist and a believer is that a scientist doesn't want to accept that what they can't understand is controlled by somebody else.
Right.
That's the only difference. And so it was about 6 years ago, and my father was passing away, and I got down on my knees, literally got down on my knees and prayed a prayer that asked just so I could speak to him again, because he was completely out of it, didn't have any awareness really of what was going on. And I said, I just want to talk to him again. I don't know how to be a man, right? Yeah. How does that work? Yeah. And so I said, I just want to talk to him again. And the very next day, he was completely coherent.
Wow.
We talked, we prayed, I asked him all the questions I needed to ask. And then the very next day, he was completely out of it again. And so, if that wasn't enough to tell me and to really, get me locked in, was that it was probably about a week and a half later, I said, I know I already prayed this prayer, and I know you already did it for me, but please give me one more opportunity to speak with him. And literally the very next day, he was coherent for the whole entire first part of the morning up until afternoon. We prayed, we did all that, and then he went away, and within a couple of days he passed away.
Wow. And
so the power of that, a lot of people would say, the power of that is that feeling, that everything that happened, and that's true. But what I like to tell people also is that the power of that is that, statistically speaking, for me to be able to pray a very specific prayer,
right,
and have that answered in a duration that was the very next day, and then to pray that same exact prayer and then have it happen again the very next day.
Yeah.
This just, the probability of that happening is, you could get hit by lightning 100 times over, and it'd still be less than that. So, right, scientifically speaking, that's one of those things where I try and tell people, I say, listen, you cannot prove, you cannot disprove, you cannot even come close to trying to figure out how that happened. And so therefore you at least have to be open to the fact that, hey, maybe there's something out there that has our best interests in hand.
Why do you think this isn't really the topic of our conversation, but just in that, why do you think that so many scientists and physicians have such a hard time with the idea that there is a creator? I mean, they're not even open to the thought that it's even a possibility. Why is that? Is it just as a human, I don't want to acknowledge there's an authority over me, or is it deeper than that?
Yeah, I think I don't think it's I don't think it has, maybe it does for some people, the authority, but I think when it comes to science, I think it's actually more of a this and I don't want to call it an arrogance, but this kind of idea that we can explain anything that goes
Sure.
on in our life.
Right.
And that's why I said I like the kind of there's many scientists of old that were in it to try and figure out what had God going on. And in the philosophy of understanding that you can't understand something
Right.
is really the deepest type of science there is. When you get into the realm of the unknown and you continue to try and figure it out, but you can never answer that question of, well, what came before that? Then it goes to the fact is that scientifically, and I like to tell people, I say, if you look at it, a scientist cannot be an atheist. If you follow the scientific method, you cannot be an atheist. The most you could be is an agnostic, because if you cannot prove nor disprove the existence of God, you have to then therefore be open to the fact that there is one. And then it comes into us. Now we actually have our eyes open and see those interactions that are beyond science after that. So
it's a tough one for me to get my mind around. I'm not a smart guy. I'm certainly not a scientist. So sometimes I struggle with that, because you're right. When you go back historically to some of the most notable early scientists and physicians and, folks who really gave us a lot of the breakthroughs in medicine, a lot of those were Christian people who believed that God gave us a mind to use, to understand, to investigate, and that was a gift. And it's interesting to see very, very intelligent people go, oh no, that's not even a possibility.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that we don't know history, which is part of a larger problem we have going on. But if you look at it, even if you read the letters that Charles Darwin wrote to students, he literally wrote, and he didn't deny the existence of a God. He basically said he doesn't know. He doesn't, but it seems highly unlikely that all of this could be poof, from a random chance, I should say. And so, same thing, Louis Pasteur, same thing. The head of the Human Genome Project right now is actually a Christian. And so there are those scientists who I think can understand that, not taking into account, not actually studying the whole realm of possibility makes you less scientific. And I think back in the day, it was inundated in culture, it was everything. And so that interplay of religion and science was always there. And in a secular environment, we try and separate those. But when we separate those, we actually limit our ability to understand true science. Yeah,
it's crazy, because you wonder about some of these, uber intelligent folks, these researchers who are ignoring evidence that might lead them to a different conclusion, because they're just completely disregarding that God is even possible. So they're coming to the wrong conclusions based on that. Fascinating. As a Christian, how is your view towards, not medicine broadly, but even the work that you do in working with athletes and working with just the human body? How is your view different than perhaps some of your peers or other people who would come from a different approach?
Yeah, I think it's a secular view versus a Christian view, and that doesn't mean Christian views are not scientific. It just means that a secular view is going to limit the data points, if you will, in which they can draw upon. And I know that might be kind of a controversial statement, but it's the absolute truth. If you go and you look, and one thing that scientists really don't like is they don't like to use case studies to make conclusions. because case studies don't have a high enough, sample size to make any real conclusions, they say, unless you have enough case studies together that can kind of start to show a trend. And the thing about it is that with Christians, and most Christians, whether Christian doctors or Christian everybody, who've had experiences that are unexplainable, such as mine, where the ability to try and say that it was by coincidence is just too far out there. Those are all case studies. Those are all one-offs, and they've never been accumulated into a large enough sample size where we can say, okay, well, let's look at these and let's throw out the ones that we can't that may seem non-scientific, but let's keep the ones in there that are, hey, we literally can't figure out why this was, and we can show some sort of causation. We don't know what the causation is, but we can show some sort of causation, because we don't need to, and this is my opinion, I like to do apologetics from an evolutionary point of view, because I use it, I guess, against them, if you will. Say, listen, all we need to know is that everything is a theory, right? And every fact is based off of a theory. Yep. And so if we disprove a theory, it actually throws our whole system out of whack. And so I look at it and I say, okay, if we were to put together enough kind of case studies to make a sample size large enough to at least say, hey, listen, there has to be something out there that you guys need to then therefore look into, add this to your data set. Then I think now we're starting to talk, whereas it's like, we're bringing back that, the religion back into the science, not in a way to, like I said, try and force it and tell people, hey, God exists and you have to understand that because of this, but to say, hey, listen, just question your own theory.
Yeah, man, that's good. One of the things that, when I look at the difference between, secular and Christian, often I think one of the dividing lines is the goal. What are we actually trying to accomplish? I'm a big believer in fitness and exercise and taking care of your body. I'm not always very good at it, but I work hard at it. And this is, to me, this is where a lot of the people who might fall into the world that I would like to inhabit, with athletes and being very physical and a lot of the things that we do, if you take out the faith aspect, or you take out the Christian worldview aspect, you might conclude that you do all of those things so that you have a better quality of life, so that you can accomplish whatever your goals are until you die, so that you're not miserable in the last few years of your life, whatever. There are a lot of ways to frame that. But as a Christian, my goal is to fully be what God created me to be. That's it. I mean, that should sum it all up. And so when I look at taking care of my body, when I look at, exercising and doing the things that I do, although hopefully you enjoy those and you can have hobbies and all that, but really the goal should be so that you are physically equipped to do what God has created you to do. And when you and I were talking about this, several weeks ago, the integration of faith and the physical, taking care of our bodies, you made some great points in that. Talk about just the importance of that, because I think there are so many Christian people, good people, who are absolutely not taking care of their bodies, and they'll dismiss it in some trite, silly way as, well, God sees the inside, not the outside. All these silly things we say, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter. I have a relationship with God. And I wonder, this is me, and someone who's listening is going to get upset. I wonder how much you actually care about doing what God wants you to do if you are unwilling to walk around your block 3 times a week, or, do whatever. Can you talk about the integration of those two things? I just did for a long time and I shouldn't have, but you take it from there. You're the actual doctor.
I will say this. I agree with you. There's, and I'm gonna excuse my swipe over here on my screen, but it says it straight in Corinthians, or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, from who you have from God? You are not your own. You were bought for a price. So glorify God in your body. That's pretty self-explanatory. He gets into it later, So whatever you eat or drink or whatever you do all in the glory of God.
Right.
And so my thing is, we can say all we want. Hey, this world, this body is temporary. It is what it is, and it matters what our everlasting soul and everything, which is all true. But we've been tasked with making disciples on this earth.
Right.
And to do that, we have to be physically capable of doing that. If we aren't, if we're bogged down by our own pains, if we're not able to be healthy enough to actually go out and meet people or whatever it may be, we're not completing that goal like we should. And so, I think that a couple of things people are going to get mad at me now as well.
Well, it's better they're mad at you than me.
Exactly. A couple of things is that, we have to think of it this way. When you're on an airplane and they're talking and telling you if the oxygen masks drop down, right? The first thing you're supposed to do is put your own mask on first. Why? Because if you don't, you might pass out and not be any good to anybody else. And so we need to look at it. People look at that and say, okay, I need to take, my spiritual health. I need to take my mental health. I need to take all this first so I can be better for other people. Well, the same thing goes with physical health. My dad was an amazing guy. He is for me, the model, other than Jesus Christ, right? Because that is the absolute model of a man. But as a father, on this earth, my dad was an amazing guy. But my dad, he got diabetes when he was in his 30s. The diabetes led to kidney failure. He had a kidney transplant, which had some complications, and it led to another 20 years, which, praise God that we had him to be alive. But it wasn't, there's so much more he could have done, physically, to be out and do all those kind of things to help people. And I would argue to a certain degree, though, however, my dad became a much stronger person and a much better Christian following that. But I would have liked to see both of those happen at one time. Sure. Two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, it's at the end of the day, if we aren't taking care of ourselves, then we're being a little bit selfish. And that sounds weird, because you would think that it's selfish to take the time out for yourself and make sure you're doing things sometimes before you do things for others. But again, if you don't do them for yourself, you're not going to be able to help others. And if you're physically bogged down by pain or whatever it may be, are you going to have the attitude of gratitude to want to be able to help people out? That's a real thing. And plus, God gave us this world to enjoy. I think it's in California, a group of Seventh-day Adventists are one of the groups in the world of centenarians. So we have different groups of centenarians around the world, Japan, somewhere in Italy, I believe, but also this little community in California. And the reason is because they incorporate health as a central aspect, or one of the central aspects, into their faith. Because of that same reason. You need to be healthy so you can be out and preaching the word, however that may be.
Yeah, that's great. I've had the conversation several times with pastors and other ministry leaders about the difference between being called and being qualified. And unfortunately, I feel like there are a lot of people God has called to specific work and specific ministry who aren't qualified because they have disqualified themselves. They haven't taken care of themselves. And what a shame that is. I just can't even imagine knowing that God wants me to do something, but not being able physically to accomplish that.
Think of it. I often think of it like this. We talked about this heavily at the Mighty Oaks program. Is that God has a plan, and God puts forth the things that are kind of going to lead us along that. But we have the choice whether to do that or to not do that. We have the choice on whether we make the right decision or not. And each one of those choices then makes it so either we're following God's path or we're not. Well, it's the same thing every time we put something in our mouth. If we don't make the right choice, we might not be qualified physically than to do the work that God's put in front of us.
Yeah.
So it is our choice on whether we accept our destiny. And a big part of that comes from health.
Can you talk about the relationship between physical health and mental health? And you know, a lot of the folks that I deal with, for sure, and that you deal with, are struggling with some degree of trauma or just something else that's going on in their life that leads to bad decisions, that leads to maybe spiraling out of control. And we're trying to pull those folks back. What's the connection between your physical health and your mental health?
Well, I mean, other than everybody knows that if you are angry, if you're depressed, if you're all these type of things, you have less motivation, right? For most of those things, you know, that's kind of the, you know, everybody knows that type of stuff. But when it gets down into it, you know, scientifically, there's a very high correlation between chronic pain and depression. You know, and so every time there's kind of two schools of thought in modern day medicine. One is that your chemicals change your behaviors, and another is that your behaviors change your chemicals. Right. And I would argue it's both. Right. You can make both sides work. Right. If you change your behavior, you can absolutely change your chemical makeup. And if you change your chemical makeup, we know from medication, you can change your behavior. Yeah. And so when it gets to it, you know, chronic pain leads to depression in a high correlation. Depression has a high correlation towards suicide. So we can go A to B to C. Sure. There's going to be a subset of those people that will make it all the way through, right? If we have two boxes and the last box is suicide, right? There's going to be some that'll fall out on either one, but there will be a certain subset that makes it all the way through. And that's what we, you know, that's the true importance of why physical health is so important when it comes to mental health, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to do two things. We're trying to save people's lives and we're trying to save people's souls, right? And without saving their life, we can't save their soul sometimes. Sure. And so it's one of those things where chemically, so there's something called there's negative feedback loops and there's positive feedback loops. And so a negative feedback loop means that when you increase a certain amount of chemical in the body, it's going to create a stopping of whatever that's doing. So you get too much in there, so your body says that's enough, and it's going to cut off that mechanism from making more. Yeah. Or there's a positive feedback loop where you have some in there, so it sees that it needs more, and it creates more, and it creates more. So our bodies are kind of a bunch of those loops. Yeah. And so, you know, the mental health is the same type of thing. So that negative feedback loop or the positive feedback loop, if you keep having negative thoughts, right, those negative thoughts lead to change in chemical makeup. That change in chemical makeup then leads to other things that happen in your body. And pain is literally just a sensor in your body. It's nerves firing, you know, that cause the pain receptors to go off. And so literally it's just your body telling you not to do something because it thinks it might get injured. But if you keep it in that cycle, what's going to happen is it's going to desensitize those. So it takes more and more to get that kind of that fix, if you will. And so we get in this chronic pain cycle. And from there, it just leads to all sorts of chemical change in the brain.
Yeah. Okay. So taking care of your body, it's important for just overall, you know, health in your life, so you feel good. But for mental health, extremely important. Maybe the thing that keeps a person from, you know, coming to the end of that chain of boxes, as you mentioned. As a person of faith that believes that God has a plan for our lives, extremely important. Our body's the vehicle that allows us to do that. So why is it then that people don't do a better job of taking care of themselves? And I'm sure you've spent many, many hours trying to convince people they need to do better. Why don't people take care of themselves, understanding what's at stake?
So I think two groups of reasons. The first group is that you can know what to do, but not how to do it.
Right.
And I think that is a very important distinction in this, because it's like, man, you need to stretch. Okay. You know how many people have said, oh yeah, I foam roll all the time. That's not stretching. I'm sorry. I don't understand what you're saying.
These are different things. Yeah.
Those are different things. And so, knowing what to do and knowing how to do it are two completely different things. And so if we can educate people, and not only educate people, but if we can give the people the knowledge, if it becomes their own, they truly understand it, so it becomes theirs, then it becomes a part of their life.
Right.
And that's one of the big things that I try and do is I say, listen, I don't want to tell you what to do. I don't want to tell you how to stretch. I want to show you and teach you what those muscles are, why they can cause certain problems, whether it be in your low back, with your hip flexors and your hamstrings and your glutes, whether it be in your neck with your upper traps and everything like that. I want to teach you why when those things get tight, they cause the damage to the discs and everything that's within. Yeah. Once you understand that, then you understand the gravity of the situation. If I don't do this, I will have a problem. And then once we understand that information, then we show you how to do it. So now it becomes yours. CrossFit is a great example of that. They build a community of people who want to learn more and more and more. And so they develop this kind of this basis of people who understand what it is they're trying to accomplish, and they understand how to do it. And then all these CrossFitters are going to hate me, and then they overdo it and they get themselves hurt. So
and they come and see you, right?
Exactly. But and then I think the second thing, so big, right? And I think people say, oh, they're just lazy, right? No, right? There's a lot. So yes, some people are just lazy, but no, knowing how to do something and why, those are really big things that we need to do a better job of showing people. Yeah. Which is why I love the opportunity here with Mighty Oaks. And I also love the opportunity, with when it comes to, say, like I said, the church out in California. It becomes part of their culture.
It's a lifestyle issue.
It's a lifestyle issue. And then I think the second part of it is kind of all of those things that we talk about in Mighty Oaks, right? Character, discipline, margin, all of those things, because it takes a character. It's a character trait to say, I'm going to get up and I'm going to work out, or I'm going to do this, pretty much routinely all the time. It takes character and discipline, because it has to become part of who you are. Yeah. And then you have to be disciplined in doing it. And then you have to have that, you have to understand your priorities and make it a priority. Otherwise you won't have the margin for it. And I think that's a big thing. People, I don't have time. Yeah. You don't have time because your priorities are thrown off. And if you truly knew that staying healthy, and I guess here's a better way to put it. If you knew that in your 60s and 70s and potentially 80s, that you were going to be you could actually tell right now that you're going to be in chronic pain, you were going to have all these diseases, you were going to have everything, I think it would change a lot of people's minds. And so that's why, when it's easy to do the things when they're right in front of you. Yeah. But when you're looking out, oh, that's 20 years away. What you do right now affects your next 10 years. And what you do in 10 years affects, as we get older. So if you're in your 30s, what you do in your 30s affects your 40s into your 50s. What you do in your 40s affects through your 60s. What you do in your 50s affects the rest of your life, because it starts to accelerate after that point. And so I think that those are the types of things that we need to do. We need to say it's a character trait to take care of your body for God, right? It's a godly trait.
Yeah, man, that's good. It's funny how in a world that is so pessimistic, I mean, everybody's negative all the time. The only area we're actually optimistic about is our own personal future. It's gonna be fine. The world is falling apart. I'm hiding under my bed all the time. What's gonna happen next? But I'm sure my body will be fine in my 70s.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Yep. And that little pain I had for the last 3 months, it'll be fine.
It'll go away.
Yeah, it'll go away.
There's no reason to worry about it.
Yeah. I will let the audience know right now. We are not children anymore. If children, things will go away in a week. They'll be fine, right? If it doesn't go away, in a week or two as an adult, it's probably not going away for a while.
Right. It's going to be with you for the for the rest of your life. Is it ever too late to start? A lot of, particularly in the veteran community, a lot of veterans, before they realize this is not going away, they're in their 40s or 50s. Some,
Yep.
we have Vietnam veterans. We've had Korean War veterans come to our programs. Is it ever too late to start getting your health on track?
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, I guess you asked the question: is it ever too late to accept Jesus? No.
Right.
It's never too late, because the thing is can your tomorrow be better than your today? Right, and that's the real question. And so I like to tell, when I work with military guys, especially the guys within the special operations, I try and tell them, I say, listen, we're going to bring you back in age by years, because the way they feel right now is older than somebody of their normal age, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if you look at a normal person walking around, they're going to feel much better than somebody who's been beat up by the military for a long period of time. So we're going to bring you back in years when we do it. And then we can look at it as the more injury you get, the more accelerated your injuries become. And so injuries kind of beget injuries because they always throw compensations into the mix. One injury makes you compensate over to this side, which then creates its own problem, which then causes another one. And so if we can slow down that acceleration, no matter what point you are, right, that means that you're going to level off on how much you're getting injured and how much pain you're having. And then if we can level off, then it gives a good chance that we can then start the downward slope of that, to make you feel better day in and day out. And again, right, it comes in as, do you want to feel better tomorrow than you did today? So start now.
Yeah.
It like they say, right? If what you're doing right now isn't working,
right.
Try something new.
Right. Yeah, that's one of our Mighty Oak sayings, and it applies just about everywhere in life. We look at ourselves and go, "Man, I feel terrible. Why do I feel so terrible?" Well, take your hand out of the chip bag and start exercising. See if that makes a difference first.
Yep.
Try something new. For those that would be, listening and they're motivated, I get it. I need to do that. Yes, knowledge has been a problem for me. Motivation perhaps has been a problem for me. Where would you tell someone to begin? And, if they were physically where you are, you could walk them through, I'm sure, a process, but you're on the phone with somebody trying to help them. Where would you tell them to start? Where does this all begin for someone that wants to do right, doesn't know how?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have a saying, add, don't subtract, right? And it's very simple. Subtracting from your life kind of stinks, right? It's hard, right? I don't want to, get fat, so I'm going to cut out donuts or cut out this or cut out that.
Yep.
It becomes hard. And so I tell people, add, don't subtract. And what I mean by that is all I want you to do is add something healthy to your day and do it first. So let's say you're eating, and you're going to have you're going to have pizza or a burger or whatever it is that's, a bag of Cheetos.
Right.
I just say, listen, take some vegetables or take a salad and a glass of water and add that to each one of your meals and do it first. Because what you're going to notice is that you're going to eat that salad, you're going to drink that water, and two things are going to happen. One, physiologically, you're going to have less room for the bad stuff. So that's kind of a benefit. Number two is that the more of those little things that you add, the less room you have, even in your mind, for adding the bad stuff. And so, well, I'm doing pretty good. I'm adding the salad. I've had salad every single meal. All right, maybe I'll add something else. And you add something else that's healthy, and you add another thing that's healthy. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you have no time to do the unhealthy things, or no urge to do them. And so I like to tell people, if you have a glass of oil, and I poured water in it, those two things separate, right? And if I keep pouring water into this glass of oil, all of a sudden, all of this oil is going to go out, and I didn't subtract anything. All I did was add. And so that's kind of where to start, right? If you want to lift weights, don't do what most people do and do too much too quickly.
Right.
Oh yeah, man, I haven't lifted weights in 10 years. So I went
Right.
out and did a CrossFit WOD, right? Again, nothing against CrossFit, but that's not the thing to do when you first start out.
Right.
So you add one thing. Hey, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to stretch, which would be my recommendation,
Mm-hmm.
because maintaining your vehicle is a good way to make sure your vehicle runs well when you want to use it. And so start out by stretching, or start out by doing yoga or Pilates or something like that, and just add it in. And it doesn't need to be a lot, right? 5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes will turn into 10, will turn into all that. So build like that.
That's man, what a great principle. I do appreciate that you're using stretching for every illustration, since I told you that I don't stretch when I exercise. So I got the message. I will I'll start stretching. Man, that principle is so good though. Add, don't subtract, because you're exactly right. When people think about getting their diet under control, it's like, oh man, I'd have to cut out everything. I would have to light my pantry on fire and start over again. Right. But do the good thing first, and then see what you have left. And I think your body responds to that, right? It wants the good fuel anyhow, and exercise is the same way. That's just a good life principle though. I'm yelling at my kids all the time for social media and being on their phones and all that stuff. But really, it's before you do any of that, why don't you start by reading your Bible? Why don't you start by, exercising? And then if you have time and feel like it, man, that's awesome. What a great principle. Man, so much I could talk to you about, but really appreciate this. You have a couple of businesses and a lot of resources available for folks. For those who are listening that want to connect with you, follow you, or just learn from you, where should they start?
That's actually pretty hard. Because of the people that I deal with, right? I only work with 3 major groups. I work with professional athletes. I work with executives and entertainers, and then I work with people within the military, specifically a lot with the special operations community. I'm not a social media guy. That's not who I am. I enjoy being that guy who comes in, helps people, and lets God do the talk, I guess.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You're probably happier for not being on
much,
social media
much
all
happier.
the time. Right.
So what I would say to them is that I do have a website coming. And so this website is being tailor built to give the information, like I talked about earlier, not just here's a stretch, do a stretch.
Yeah.
Here's the anatomy behind the stretch. Here is why you do the stretch. And then here is how you do the stretch. Right. In building up the information on people, so it becomes theirs. I want them to be able to own this, because when they can own it, they can take it, they can run with it, and eventually they can become just like anything, right? When we train disciples, they can become disciples of that to help other people and other Christians, live the life that we are intended to live. So that's called Logical Body. It's called Logical Body for a reason, because the body's very logical in the way it does. You just need to understand it. When it gives you pain, it's telling you, please don't do that. Yeah. When it starts to tighten up, people will say, well, I was getting stiff while I was working out. You are the warmest you can possibly be while you're working out. If you're getting stiff while you work out, that means that there's a problem. And so understanding those things and being able to then make the right decisions. So that's going to be awesome. I'm going to build it up. It's going to be pretty much all video based.
Yeah.
And then that'll be a big help to people. There'll also be a way that they can contact me through there. So if they have questions, they have anything, they just basically say, hey, Doc, what do you think about this? And I push something to them. So that's coming soon. And the other way is I do have an Instagram, I think, for Logical Body. So it's at Logical Body. And if people contact me through that, I will respond. I just need to probably remember the password to get into it.
So we'll wait for the website to come online.
Yeah,
and, that'll
exactly.
be the best way. And organizationally, we'll push that link out when it's live too, because a big part of the reason you're developing that is for folks who would fall into the community that we serve. Veterans and those who need the help but don't have access to it.
That's exactly right. It's actually tailor-made I'm building it for my military and veteran guys. And the reason is because, athletes, and don't get me wrong, it's not like the athletes know all of this stuff either. They're very, very good at what they do.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that they know how to stay healthy. As I think it was Terrell Owens, who said you can't get a six-pack eating McDonald's while he was doing abs,
Right.
And so they need that information as well. But I'm tailor building this for the military community because not only have they sacrificed so much, for our freedoms, which I want to make sure that we then give back and help them slow down the acceleration of the injuries, reverse those things, and then overall, like you said, make sure that their bodies can be not the non-limiting factor in their ability to come to Christ and disciple.
Yeah, that's awesome. Dr. Holmes, really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll have a conversation again in the future, but thank you for the work that you're doing. It was awesome to connect with you in person. It was kind of a weird thing, to be honest with you. I had no idea people carried their MRIs around on their phone. But just to watch you work, you came to a program just to see what we're about and to connect with us. But you went through the whole program for an entire week and participated that way. But once those guys found out what you were all about, there was like a line at every break and people showing you their MRIs, asking for help.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. That's your heart for sure. And I really appreciate it. Thanks for this, and look forward to doing it again.
Perfect. I just want to say one thing before I go. It was an absolute honor to be allowed to go through the Mighty Oaks program. I know that isn't something that's afforded to civilians very often, if at all. And to be able to go through it and actually be able to understand into a deeper level of what these guys are going through, so I can help them out when it comes to my side, right? The gift that I've been given on the physical side. To be able to help them to come to Christ and disciple in the future was an absolute honor. So I appreciate that.
Awesome. David, thank you so much. And look forward to talking again.
All right. Talk to you later.
Yes, sir. Incredible conversation. So thankful for just the opportunity to break down some of these issues. I often have thoughts that in my mind are connected. Maybe you're the same way, but I can't put it all together. And this is one of those areas. How does the physical, how I feel, and my ability to take care of my body, how does that connect to my spiritual life and my emotional health and just my ability to do what I believe I was placed on this planet to do? And all of us were placed on this planet to do something. And for you, if you are not taking care of the vehicle that God gave you to accomplish that something, then you're missing out. And I think that's true of all of us, particularly those who have dealt with trauma. And perhaps some of the mental or emotional trauma was accompanied with some physical trauma. How do we move through that? What a great conversation. And so thankful for Dr. Holmes and his interest, not just in helping professional athletes, as incredible as that is, and also those in the special operations community, but his focus on helping the men and women who have served across the military. And man, this has been a great help to us and will continue to be. And as I said when we were starting, I hope this is one of many conversations that we'll be able to have. I want to thank you for listening, but before I jump off, I want to just echo what Dr. Holmes said there at the end. The work that we do at the Mighty Oaks Foundation is important work, and it's a work that allows us to really meet men and women who have served where they are. That's a big part of why we're also talking about the physical. How can we meet folks where they are, where they're hurting, where they're struggling, and to help them work through these issues? We want to do that. And we're able to do that because there are donors across the country that allow us to do that. They provide the financial resources we need to provide our programs absolutely free to those that are attending. We even cover the cost of travel, doing our best to help folks get to exactly where they need to be without the obstacles in front of them that would prevent them. And so if you know someone, a man or woman who has served in the United States military that could use a program like the Mighty Oaks program, please take some time. Go over to mightyoaksprograms.org. That's our website, mightyoaksprograms.org. You can find out information about us, and those who would need to attend a program or would like to attend a program can even find an application there. Everything you need is right there. including other ways for you to support the work that we have been called to do. I'm so thankful for our audience, so thankful for those of you who make the work that we do possible, and excited about the future. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Look forward to talking to you next time.